Billionaire CEO finds black boy at his wife's grave, freezes when he hears the truth. You're standing at the wrong grave, kid. Elias Grant's voice came out low, firm, but slightly off balance, like the ground under his feet had shifted, and he wasn't sure why. The morning fog still lingered around the gravestones, a cool mist wrapping the cemetery in silence, except for the crunch of gravel under his designer shoes. The boy didn't flinch. He was kneeling in front of the marble headstone, a hoodie swallowing his small frame, hands folded neatly in his lap like he belonged there, like this grave was his too. Elias's eyes dropped to the engraved words, Camille Grant, beloved wife and mentor, 1979 to 2021. Elias swallowed hard. That pain never really went away. Even 2 years later, the sight of her name in stone hit him like a punch to the chest. "I'm sorry," the boy whispered without looking back. "I didn't mean to bother you." That voice, that tone. Elias's gut tightened in a way he couldn't explain. "I visit her every week," the boy said, still not moving. "My mom says this is where my real dad comes to talk to her." Elias blinked, his hand tightening around the bouquet he brought. For a second, he thought he misheard. "What did you say?" The boy finally turned his head. Wide, dark eyes met Elias's, not frightened, not even surprised. Just tired. Tired in a way a child shouldn't be. "My mom said this is her grave. She told me you come here a lot. That maybe one day I'd get to meet you." Elias's chest constricted. His fingers went numb around the flowers. "What's your name?" he asked, voice tighter than before. "Noah?" the boy answered quietly. "Noah Carter." Carter. The name hit Elias like a bolt of lightning. His world tilted. "What's your mom's name?" "Renee. Renee Carter." Elias took a shaky step back. Renee Carter. That name hadn't passed his lips in over a decade. She had been Camille's best friend once, practically her shadow. Until one day she vanished. Camille never spoke of her again, just burned every photo, deleted every message, and shut down any conversation that brought her name up. "I think," the boy said, standing slowly, "you knew her." Elias couldn't speak. That was how it started. 3 hours earlier, Elias had been in his glass-walled office on the 47th floor of Grant Tower, reviewing quarterly projections, fielding calls, sipping bitter espresso that tasted like everything else in his life, expensive and empty. He always came alone on this day. Every year, without fail, he slipped out of the chaos, left his phone in the car, and visited Camille's grave with fresh lilies and the letter he never got to finish writing before she died. Camille Grant, the woman the world had called brilliant, poised, unbreakable. To Elias, she was so much more. She was the reason he became the man he was, the fire behind the empire, the love that once gave him purpose. And yet, he knew now she'd taken something with her when she left. A secret. He hadn't come to find it, but it found him. Noah stood quietly now, watching Elias like he wasn't sure what to expect next. "How old are you, Noah?" Elias finally asked, voice softer. 10. Elias nodded slowly, mind racing. That would have placed his birth right around the time Camille was dealing with her second miscarriage, the one that left her unable to carry again. At least, that was the story she told him. He stared at the boy, his sharp cheekbones, that dimple on the left side when he tilted his mouth just slightly, those eyes that looked so heartbreakingly familiar. "You think Camille was your mother?" "No," Noah said. "My mom is Renee." But she said Camille was like family, that they were connected, that she promised to take care of me. But something happened, then you stopped coming, and Mom said I shouldn't ask. Elias couldn't breathe. "Why are you here today, Noah?" "I just wanted to see you, to see if you'd look at me like she used to." "Who?" Camille. Silence fell between them, thick and strange. Elias crouched slightly, setting the flowers down. His voice dropped lower. Did your mom ever say who your father was? Noah shrugged. Only once. She said he wore suits that cost more than her rent and ran from things he should have protected. Elias winced. She also said he probably didn't know I existed. His hands curled into fists, but not out of anger. Out of shame. Something old and buried was waking up in him. Does she know you came here? Noah shook his head. She's at work. I snuck out. I don't think she ever thought I'd find you. Elias exhaled slowly. This was too much. Too fast. His carefully built life, his company, his wealth, his reputation, none of it had prepared him for this. Still kneeling, he looked the boy straight in the eye. Noah, he said, I don't know what happened between Camille and your mother. I don't know why she never told me anything, but I want to find out, and I want to do it the right way. The boy blinked, uncertain. I'm not promising anything except this, Elias continued. If what your mother said is true, if I am who she says I am, then I should have been there from the start. Noah's mouth trembled, and for a moment Elias saw it. That fracture in the boy's armor. The hope trying to sneak through. I should go, Noah whispered, before she gets home. I'll take you. Noah hesitated, then nodded. The ride was quiet. Elias drove a matte black Bentley, completely out of place in the rundown neighborhood Noah called home. When they arrived at a faded yellow apartment complex, Noah pointed to the second-floor unit. Elias parked and opened the door for him, suddenly unsure what to say. Tell her I didn't mean to find you, Noah said before heading up the stairs. I just needed to know. He disappeared through the door. Elias sat in the car for several minutes, staring up at the unit. Camille's grave had always been where he went to grieve, but today it became something else entirely. A doorway, a beginning, and for the first time in a very long time, Elias Grant wasn't sure who he was supposed to be, but he knew who he had to become, because the truth wasn't buried anymore. It had a name. Noah. Elias Monroe didn't sleep that night. The city glittered beneath the towering windows of his penthouse, but it may as well have been a black void. His mind played loops of Noah's face, Renee's name, and Camille's silence like a reel he couldn't pause. For years he'd grieved the loss of his wife, thinking he knew everything. Now he wasn't sure he knew anything at all. He stood in front of Camille's photo on the mantel, a simple black and white portrait she'd hated because she thought it made her look too serious. But Elias loved it. It was the only photo where she wasn't smiling, and that made it honest. You kept this from me, he whispered, voice hoarse. Why? Camille had never been reckless. She was methodical, intentional. If she took something to the grave, it was for a reason. But Elias was done letting the past remain buried. By sunrise, he was behind the wheel again, driving toward the south side instead of the Monroe Tower. He didn't tell his assistant. He didn't check his phone. He needed answers, unfiltered, and face-to-face. When he knocked on the faded green door of apartment 2B, the sound echoed down the hallway like a warning. It was Renee who opened it. For a second, her expression didn't register him. Just a tired woman answering her door at 7 a.m. in a too-big sweatshirt and hair pulled back in a scarf. Then her eyes locked on his. Elias watched the air leave her lungs. You, she said, her voice a blend of disbelief and venom. You've got nerve. Renee, no, you don't get to say my name like that, like you didn't disappear. I didn't even know, he said, stepping forward. I didn't know about Noah, about anything. She didn't back up, didn't blink. And now you do. So what, Elias? You come here to feel guilty in person? I came here because I saw him at Camille's grave. Her jaw clenched. I asked him not to go. "You should have told me," he said, voice cracking. "You should have told me I had a son." She laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You think I didn't try? You think I wanted to raise a child alone, struggling paycheck to paycheck, while you played grieving husband in your glass castle?" Elias was stunned. "You reached out?" "I wrote letters," she said, fire rising in her voice. "I emailed your assistant. I even sent one to Camille." His blood ran cold. "Camille never said a word." "Of course she didn't," Renee said, crossing her arms. "Because she made a choice. A choice for both of us." Elias took a breath. "Why?" Renee hesitated. "You want the truth?" "I need it. Because Camille didn't want to share you, not with anyone, not with the woman she thought ruined her marriage, not even with the child. She told me to disappear, that it was better for everyone." Elias felt his knees weaken. "That doesn't sound like her." "She was grieving, angry, and she thought you'd never forgive her if you knew the whole truth." "What truth?" Renee hesitated again, then said softly, "Noah isn't just your son. He's also hers." The silence hit like a wave of bricks. Elias blinked. "What are you saying?" Renee turned and walked into the apartment. He followed, slow, disoriented. She pulled a small binder from a drawer and handed it to him. Medical records, custody paperwork, a notarized agreement. She couldn't carry again after her second miscarriage, but she wanted a child, and she asked me. Elias stared at the documents like they were written in another language. "You were the surrogate." "Not exactly. It was complicated. We were close, closer than you knew. Camille didn't want it in the press. She didn't want you to worry. But when the time came, everything changed. She panicked, said it was a mistake. And you kept him." "I loved him from the moment he kicked," Renee said quietly. "And I told her I'd raise him. But I didn't think she'd walk away completely." Elias sat down on the old couch, the room spinning around him. "She never told me," he murmured. "She didn't trust herself," Renee replied. "And after she passed, what was I supposed to do? Just show up at your front door with a kid and a story no one would believe?" "I would have believed you." "You wouldn't have wanted the responsibility," she said, almost too quietly. He met her eyes. "I do now." A long silence fell between them. "You don't get to erase the years you missed," she said at last. "You can't just sweep in now and play Father of the Year." "I'm not here to play anything," Elias said. "But he came to me, and I won't turn my back on him." From down the hall, a soft voice called out, "Mom?" Noah stepped into the room, rubbing his eyes. He froze when he saw Elias. "You came back." Elias nodded slowly. "I told you I would." The boy looked between him and Renee, uncertain. "Is this okay?" he asked his mom. Renee didn't answer right away. She looked at Elias again, her expression unreadable. "I don't know," she said, "but maybe it's a start." Noah's face lit up, just a little, and Elias felt something shift in his chest, something old cracking open, something new trying to take root. Maybe he hadn't known the whole story, but he would now, and this time he wouldn't walk away. The sun was setting behind the city skyline, casting amber light through the windows of Elias Monroe's office. He stood at the edge of the floor-to-ceiling glass, staring out at a world that suddenly felt foreign. His reflection stared back at him, hollow-eyed and exhausted. Behind him, his phone buzzed, again. But he didn't move. His assistant had rescheduled 3 meetings already. Elias hadn't offered an explanation. He hadn't told anyone. No one at Monroe Industries knew the CEO had a son. A son born of a secret, raised in the shadows of a broken agreement between 2 women. One his wife, the other someone he barely knew, but now couldn't stop thinking about. Noah. That name had a weight now. It echoed in his mind with every breath, every thought. He'd spent a lifetime building his empire, thinking that legacy meant numbers, press releases, stock options. Now legacy had a face. 10 years old, wide-eyed, and watching him like he was both a stranger and a question waiting to be answered. The elevator chimed behind him. Elias didn't turn until the doors opened and his sister, Dana Monroe, stepped out, sharp, stylish, and visibly irritated. "I canceled my dinner plans, Elias. You better not be dragging me into another PR mess," she said, tossing her bag onto the couch. He gestured toward the bar cart. "You might want a drink first." Dana narrowed her eyes but poured herself a bourbon anyway. "What's going on?" Elias walked toward his desk, picked up the manila folder he hadn't stopped looking through since leaving Renee's apartment. Without a word, he handed it to her. Dana opened it, flipped, paused. "What is this?" "A mistake," he muttered. "A secret. A son." She looked up sharply. "What are you talking about?" "I have a child, Dana, a 10-year-old boy. His name is Noah." Dana blinked. "You... what?" "He was born through surrogacy, sort of. Camille arranged it with a woman named Renee. I didn't know. Camille never told me." "You're saying Camille had a child behind your back?" "Number, it was more complicated than that. She changed her mind. Renee raised him. Alone." Dana's eyes flickered with a dozen unspoken questions. "And you found out? How?" "At her grave. He was there." "Jesus." "Yeah." Dana paced, folder in hand. "So what now? You plan to just announce this to the world? Add him to the holiday cards?" "I don't know what I'm planning," Elias admitted. "I just know I'm not walking away. I already missed 10 years. Dana sank onto the couch. "Do you know how messy this could get? If this leaks, the board will panic. Investors hate surprise heirs." "I don't care what the board thinks." "You should. Your entire company is tied to your name. This isn't just about paternity. It's about control, image, money. Renee could go to the press tomorrow and blow this whole thing open." "She won't." "You sure about that?" "She had 10 years to do that." "She didn't." Dana sighed, rubbing her temples. "So what do you need from me?" "Help me protect them. Both of them." Dana glanced at him, something softening in her eyes. "You really care about this kid?" "I don't know him yet," Elias said, voice low. "But I care that he's mine. And I care that he's been out there thinking he wasn't wanted." Dana nodded slowly. "Then we start with legal. I'll pull up guardianship procedures, background checks, paternity confirmation." Quietly. "Thank you," she smirked. "Don't thank me yet. This could get ugly." That night, Elias didn't return to his penthouse. He drove back to Southside, parked a block away from Renee's apartment, and sat in the car like a man trying to remember how to be human. At exactly 8:12 p.m., a knock came on his window. He looked up to see Noah, wearing a hoodie, jeans, and a backpack slung over one shoulder. "You stalking us now?" the boy asked, more curious than afraid. "I was hoping I might catch you," Elias replied, getting out of the car. Noah shrugged. "I'm going to the community center, chess night." "You play?" "Every week," Noah said, eyes flickering with pride. "Coach says I've got real strategy." Elias smiled, surprised. "Mind if I walk with you?" Noah hesitated, then gave a casual nod. "Sure, but I'm not letting you win." As they walked, Elias noticed how easily the boy moved through the neighborhood. People waved, nodded, called his name. This place, this modest strip of brick buildings and chain-link fences, was his world. "You live far from here?" Noah asked. "Yeah. Midtown, the place with the buildings that look like they're from movies." Elias laughed. "Kind of." Noah nodded. "Mom says fancy places don't make people better. They just make it harder to tell who they really are." Elias stopped walking. That's a smart thing to say. She says a lot of stuff like that. They reached the community center. A volunteer at the door gave Noah a warm high five and looked at Elias with curiosity. Elias offered a small nod but didn't go in. "I'll wait out here," he said, "if that's okay with you." Noah stared at him for a long second, then said, "You don't have to. But thanks for coming." As the boy disappeared inside, Elias leaned against the fence, watching him join a circle of kids around a chessboard. 10 years ago, he'd buried Camille and thought that was the end of their story. But it wasn't. It was only the beginning of another one. And this time, he wasn't going to miss it. The knock came just after 9. Renee had just managed to get Noah to finish his homework and was halfway through washing dishes when the soft rapping echoed through the apartment. She froze, dish towel in hand, heart skipping once before resuming its careful rhythm. It wasn't unusual to have visitors this late in the neighborhood, but something about the knock was different, hesitant, purposeful. She opened the door to find Elias standing there, dressed in a charcoal sweater and dark jeans, nothing like the corporate armor he normally wore. He looked human and exhausted. "Is he asleep?" he asked quietly. "Just went down," Renee replied, crossing her arms. "I didn't expect you." "I needed to talk to you," Elias said, his voice more fragile than she'd ever heard it. "And I didn't want to do it over email or some cold legal call." She stepped aside, letting him in. The apartment was modest, bookshelves overflowing, a few of Noah's sketches taped to the walls, the faint scent of lavender still hanging in the air. Elias looked around like he was absorbing every detail, every corner of a world he'd never been invited into before. "Sit," Renee said, gesturing to the worn couch. "Talk." He sat down slowly, hands clasped in front of him like he was preparing to confess a sin. "I know why you did what you did," he started. "I know Camille made you promise to stay away." Renee didn't flinch. "And I kept that promise." "I know. But I also know Camille never told me. About Noah. About any of it." She looked at him sharply. "You really expect me to believe you never knew?" "I didn't," he said, his voice breaking. "Not until I saw him at her grave." Renee sighed and sat in the chair across from him. Camille didn't want him to grow up under a microscope. She didn't want him to be a pawn in your family's legacy game. Elias nodded. She was right. And maybe I don't deserve a place in his life. But I'm asking for it anyway. Renee's eyes softened, but only slightly. "He's 10, Elias. He's not a chess piece. He's a kid. And he's been through enough without you dragging him into your world now, just because you're feeling guilty." "It's not guilt," he said. "It's clarity. For the first time in years, I actually see what matters, and it's not my board seat or quarterly earnings. It's him." She leaned forward, her voice low. "Then prove it. Not with gestures. Not with money, with presence. That's what he needs. That's what he's never had." Elias nodded slowly. "I want to try, and I want to do it your way." A long silence stretched between them. Renee studied him, trying to determine if this was just another move from a man used to getting what he wanted. Finally, she said, "Okay, but this isn't about what you want, it's about what he needs. You understand that?" "I do." "Good, because if you hurt him again, there won't be a second chance." The next morning, Elias showed up at Noah's school just before the first bell. Renee watched from the sidewalk as Noah spotted him at the gate and walked up, backpack slung over one shoulder. "You here to embarrass me?" the boy asked, eyeing him suspiciously. Elias smiled. "Number, I'm here to walk you in. If you're okay with that." Noah shrugged. "Yeah, I guess." They walked side by side, silence stretching until Elias cleared his throat. "Your mom says you like science." Noah glanced over. "Yeah, I want to be an engineer, space stuff." Rockets, maybe. Elias smiled. I might know a few people who can help with that. Like who? Elon Musk. Elias chuckled. Number. But I know some folks at MIT and NASA. Noah blinked. Wait, for real? For real, but only if you're serious about it. I am, Noah said, eyes lighting up for the first time. Like, really serious. Good. Then let's make it happen. That afternoon, Elias met Dana back at his office. You're glowing, she said, smirking as she set a thick folder on his desk. You look like you just closed a $100 million deal. I think I just got my son to talk to me for longer than 30 seconds, Elias replied. Well, here's the part that might ruin your good mood. She opened the folder. I ran that background check you asked for. Renee Carter. Elias frowned. She's clean. No way she has skeletons. She doesn't, Dana said. But Camille did. He froze. What are you talking about? Dana flipped to a page near the back. Camille didn't just choose Renee randomly. They knew each other. From college. Same dorm, same activism circles. They were close, and I found emails, old ones, archived on Camille's law school server. She wrote to Renee a few months before she got sick. About you. Elias picked up the paper, scanning the lines. His throat tightened. She wanted to tell me, he whispered. She did, Dana said quietly. But your father got to her first. Elias looked up, stunned. What? Your father had her followed, intercepted emails, threatened to revoke her medical trust if she didn't cut ties. Elias dropped the paper. Jesus. He buried this, Elias. Buried it deep. He didn't want any disruptions to the family name. He saw a child with a surrogate as a liability. Elias leaned back, hands shaking. All this time, I thought Camille had chosen to keep it from me. I thought Renee was just protecting a secret. No, Dana said. They were both protecting you. From the man you never dared to stand up to. Elias felt the floor shift beneath him. His empire, so carefully built, had always stood on someone else's silence. Now it was time to break it. The walls of Elias Grant's penthouse had never felt so hollow. He stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out over a skyline that once meant everything. His reflection stared back, sharper than he remembered, older than he expected. The truth Dana had uncovered kept ringing in his ears. His father, Franklin Grant Sr., the man who built the empire Elias now ran, had manipulated Camille's silence, controlled it, weaponized it. And Elias, he'd spent years believing she'd simply chosen to disappear. He turned from the glass and paced across the room, his footsteps muffled by plush carpet. Dana sat on the leather armchair nearby, watching him quietly. She had seen him close billion-dollar deals without blinking, dismantle rival companies with 3 sentences. But this Elias, wounded, haunted, was someone entirely different. I need to see him, Elias said, finally breaking the silence. Franklin? Elias nodded. He needs to look me in the eye and explain it. I want to hear it from his mouth. Dana hesitated. You sure you're ready for that? The man's got a long record of gaslighting his own board. You think he won't twist this too? I don't care if he tries, Elias said. I need to say what I've been holding in for years. I need him to see what he broke. Later that afternoon, Elias pulled into the circular drive of the Grant estate, a place that hadn't changed since his childhood. Black iron gates, hedges clipped with military precision, the house looming like a monument to legacy. His father was in the sunroom, seated in a high-backed leather chair, reading a financial report. I wasn't expecting you, Franklin Sr. said, barely glancing up. I figured that's how you prefer things, being in control. Franklin folded the paper with slow, deliberate care. Is this about Camille? Elias stiffened. You know damn well what this is about. Franklin raised an eyebrow, like a man being mildly inconvenienced by a bad investment. You were distracted, emotional. She would have derailed your focus. She was carrying my son. And you have him now, Franklin said evenly. The result is the same. The result, Elias said, voice rising, is 10 years of a child growing up without his father, of a woman dying without closure. And you think that's a success story? Franklin stood slowly. I think you forget what it costs to be powerful. You want your empire or you want bedtime stories and PTA meetings. You can't have both. Elias stepped forward, fury boiling beneath his skin. I'm not you. Franklin smiled, just slightly. But you're still in my house. Elias held his gaze for a long moment, then turned and walked out, heart hammering, every inch of his body vibrating with rage. This time there would be no more silence, no more shadows. He had work to do. The next morning he met Renee at her apartment. You look like you haven't slept, she said as he stepped inside. I didn't. I went to see my father. Her expression hardened. And? He doesn't regret it, Elias said. He thinks he saved me. Renee sighed, sitting across from him. That sounds about right. But he didn't just silence Camille, Elias added. He's still doing it. He's still threatening people behind closed doors. Anyone who challenges him inside Grant Industries gets buried. Renee's eyes narrowed. You're saying there are more victims? I'm saying Camille wasn't the first, and she wasn't the last. He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim folder, handing it to her. What's this? She asked, flipping it open. Proof. NDA violations, payouts, forced resignations of women who spoke up. This is bigger than me. Renee scanned the pages, her breath catching. You're planning to expose this? Elias nodded. I've already contacted a journalist at the Sentinel, one who's been after Grant Industries for years. But I want your help making sure the story hits hard. I want people to see Camille and Noah. Renee was quiet for a long beat. You really mean this, she finally said. I do, and I'm not backing down. She stood slowly, looking him in the eye. Then let's finish what Camille started. By the weekend, a draft of the article was in place. Dana had combed through every document, redacting names for safety but keeping the substance sharp. The headline read, Legacy of Silence, How Grant Industries Buried Truths to Protect a Name. Renee wrote the opening paragraph. She didn't mention Camille's full name, but her words cut like glass. She died protecting the truth, but the truth deserves to live. The story dropped Monday morning. By noon, the phones at Grant Industries were ringing off the hook. Major clients demanded answers. The board called an emergency session. Employees forwarded the article in hushed tones, and somewhere in D.C., an intern in a public policy class read it and cried, remembering how she too had been told to stay quiet. Renee and Elias sat side by side in the newsroom conference room as the story aired on TV. Noah, playing on the carpet nearby, looked up occasionally but didn't fully understand what was happening. That's you, he said, pointing to Elias on screen. Yeah, Elias replied softly. That's me. Noah tilted his head. Are you in trouble? A little, Elias admitted with a crooked smile. But it's the kind that makes things better. Noah nodded and returned to his Legos. As the segment ended, Renee looked at Elias. So what happens now? He leaned back, exhaling slowly. Now, he said, we rebuild. But this time we do it right. The boardroom at Grant Industries was unusually silent. 12 directors sat around the obsidian glass table, each with a copy of the newspaper folded neatly in front of them. The headline still burned, Legacy of Silence, How Grant Industries Buried Truths to Protect a Name. At the head of the table sat Elias Grant, tie loosened, jaw tight, eyes unblinking. Across from him sat his father, Franklin Sr., looking composed, as if none of it touched him. But the slight twitch at the corner of his eye betrayed something Elias had never seen before: unease. Chairwoman Judith Lansing cleared her throat. "Elias, I'll be blunt. The company's stock dropped 4% in the last 36 hours. Clients are on edge. We've received media requests from every major outlet. And now there are whispers of class action lawsuits forming." Elias nodded. "I'm aware." "You broke protocol," another board member snapped. "You didn't consult us before going to the press." "I didn't break protocol," Elias said evenly. "I broke silence. There's a difference." Franklin leaned forward. "This isn't about integrity. This is about you letting emotion cloud judgment." "Emotion?" Elias stood, planting his palms on the table. "My wife died believing I'd abandoned her. My son grew up without a father. Women were silenced because of us. And you want to call that emotion?" Judith raised a hand. "Sit down, both of you. This is bigger than a father-son feud. This is corporate survival." Elias's phone buzzed on the table. A text. He glanced down. From Dana. "The whistleblower just went public. Check your inbox." He opened the email and froze. Attached was a video, grainy, clearly shot in secret but unmistakable. His father. In the very boardroom they were sitting in now, talking to legal counsel. "We can settle the Carter case quietly," Franklin was saying in the video. "No headlines. Just cut a check and make her sign. If she goes public, we bury her." Elias's blood ran cold. He looked up, holding the phone high so everyone could see. This was recorded 6 years ago. The woman he's talking about? Camille. A wave of gasps rippled through the board. Judith narrowed her eyes. "Is this verified?" Elias nodded. Time-stamped. Confirmed. Franklin stood, voice low and dangerous. "That video was never meant to see daylight." "And that's exactly the problem," Elias said, his voice rising. "Everything about how you've run this company was never meant to see daylight. That ends now." The board went silent. Elias turned to Judith. "You want to talk corporate survival? We won't survive if we keep pretending this didn't happen. We need full accountability, external investigation, transparency with the press, and effective immediately. Franklin Grant Sr. should step down." "You don't have the votes," Franklin snapped. Elias met his gaze. "Try me." A beat passed. Then Judith turned to the room. "All in favor?" One by one, hands raised. First Judith, then Marcus, then Lucia. 10 out of 12. Franklin's jaw tightened. He looked around the table, then back at Elias. "You think you've won?" Elias didn't flinch. "I'm not here to win. I'm here to fix what you broke." That night, Elias returned to the apartment. He found Noah asleep on the couch, book on his chest, his tiny frame curled under a NASA blanket. Renee was in the kitchen, reheating dinner. "You look like you've been through a war," she said, handing him a plate. "I have," he replied, taking it with a tired smile. "But I think the first battle is over." Renee leaned against the counter. "How'd the vote go?" "He's out. They're launching an independent review." She exhaled slowly. "That's something." He nodded, then paused. "I was thinking about Camille today." Renee's expression softened. "She used to say silence is never neutral," he continued. "That if you're not using your voice, someone else is using your silence." She was right. I wish she'd lived long enough to see this. "She would have been proud," Renee said, "and pissed it took this long." They both chuckled quietly. "Also," Elias added, setting the plate down, "Noah said something earlier that kind of destroyed me." Renee raised an eyebrow. "He asked if he was a mistake." Her smile vanished. "I told him the truth, that he was the best thing that ever happened to me, and that no one, not even my father, gets to decide who deserves to be loved. Renee looked away for a moment, blinking hard. "You're doing better than most," she said finally, trying. A long silence settled between them. Then Elias asked, "Do you think I'm enough for him?" Renee studied him. "I think you're the only one who ever will be." Later that night, Elias sat by Noah's bed, stroking his hair as the boy slept. He thought of all the times he should have been there. First steps, scraped knees, birthday candles blown out with no one to cheer. But he was here now, and this time no one was going to take that away. It started with a knock at the door just after dawn. Noah sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building a spaceship from Legos, his face serious with concentration. Elias was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, trying to ignore the pounding headache from the 4 hours of sleep he barely got. The media firestorm was only growing louder, every outlet replaying his speech, dissecting the fallout, speculating on what came next for one of America's most powerful CEOs. But none of that prepared him for what stood on the other side of the door. Camille's sister, Denise. Elias hadn't seen her in nearly a decade. She looked older now, more worn by time and grief, but her posture was still firm, chin high, eyes the same cutting shade of brown Camille had passed down to their son. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Denise," Elias breathed, stepping aside. "Come in." She didn't smile. "I wasn't sure I should, but I figured it was time." Noah looked up from the floor. "Aunt Dee?" She knelt down, arms out. "Hey, baby, look at you." He ran into her arms like he'd been waiting for this hug his whole life. As Elias watched, something unspoken passed between them. Years of missed birthdays and broken connections compressed into one embrace. Denise finally stood, turning to Elias. "I saw the press conference. And the apology. I didn't expect that from you." "I didn't expect any of this," Elias said quietly. They sat down at the small dining table, Noah still within earshot, building and listening. "I owe you more than I can explain," Elias began. "I should have found you, should have kept him close." Denise's lips pressed into a line. "Camille never hated you, you know." "Not really. She was hurt, furious. But deep down, she hoped you'd change." Elias looked away. "She always had more faith in me than I earned." A long pause stretched between them. Then Denise pulled out a worn envelope from her purse. "She wrote this after Noah turned 5. She never sent it. Said she wasn't sure you deserved it yet. Maybe you do now." Elias took the envelope with trembling fingers, recognizing the loopy, slanted handwriting immediately. His throat thickened as he opened it. "Elias, you missed his first words, his first steps. You don't even know that he likes thunder because he thinks it sounds like drums in the sky. I don't write this to punish you. I write it because someday, if you become the man I used to believe you could be, I want you to know what you missed. And I want you to earn the chance to know him. Not by throwing money at him, not by press appearances or guilt, but by showing up. Every single day, the way fathers should. If you ever come back, don't come for me. Come for him, and come with your heart wide open. See." He didn't notice the tears until Denise reached across the table and placed a hand over his. "She kept every article, every picture of you. No matter how angry she was, she still wanted Noah to know his father." Elias swallowed hard. "I wish I'd come back sooner. I wish I hadn't needed this kind of loss to open my eyes." "That's the thing about grief," she said. "It doesn't erase guilt, but it gives you a shot at redemption, if you're brave enough." Later that afternoon, the storm hit. The city's tabloids released an internal email from a whistleblower at Grant Industries, suggesting Camille's case wasn't the only one. A list of names, dozens of women of color whose proposals, promotions, and even harassment complaints were buried, surfaced. The media pounced. It was bigger than Elias. bigger than Franklin. It had become a reckoning. Back in the apartment, Elias gathered Noah in his arms. "I want you to know something," he said, holding him tighter than usual. Noah blinked up at him. "What?" "Your mom was the bravest person I ever knew, and I made a lot of mistakes, but I'm going to spend every day proving that I've changed, not just to the world, but to you." Noah frowned. "You're already better than before." Elias let out a breath that sounded a little like a laugh, a little like a sob. "That means more than you know." That evening, Denise helped prepare dinner. The kitchen was filled with the smell of baked chicken and rice, laughter from Noah as he told her a story about a space comic he'd read. The table felt full for the first time in years. Afterward, Denise pulled Elias aside. "People are going to come after you now, hard. You understand that?" "I do," he said, "but I'm not hiding anymore. Not behind wealth, not behind excuses." She looked at him carefully. "Camille would have liked this version of you." "I just hope Noah grows up liking him too." The next morning, Elias went live on national television. He stood at the same podium where his father once made expansion announcements and profit projections. But this time there were no charts, no scripts, just a man in a suit with tired eyes and a fierce resolve. "For years, my company has operated in silence, choosing reputation over truth, image over integrity. That ends now." He laid out a plan, an independent task force to review internal cases, compensation funds for silenced employees, his resignation from all executive power until the investigation concluded. "I'm stepping aside not to escape accountability, but to make room for justice." As he finished, a journalist called out from the crowd, "Why now, Mr. Grant?" Elias looked into the camera, eyes steady. "Because my son asked me why people like him don't get to be seen, and I never want to give him the same answer I once gave myself, because power didn't care." The silence that followed was louder than any applause. He stepped off the stage and into a new version of his life, one where truth cost him everything he once thought mattered, but gave him back what truly did. The smell of rain lingered in the air, fresh from a summer storm that had swept through Los Angeles just hours before the memorial service. Rows of white chairs dotted the grassy field of the Ridgeview Community Garden, Camille's favorite place in the city. The same place she used to bring Noah to dig in the dirt, plant tomatoes, or just sit in the shade and talk about the stars. Now it was filled with people, friends, neighbors, colleagues, and even strangers whose lives she'd touched. Elias stood beneath the large oak tree where Camille once hung, string lights for community potlucks. In his hand was a folded piece of paper, trembling slightly in the soft breeze. He took a breath. Camille didn't like grand speeches. She said truth should be short and sharp, like a well-thrown stone. But today, I need more than a stone. He paused, scanning the faces in the crowd. Noah sitting between Aunt Denise and Dr. Lena Brooks from NASA, his small hand gripping Camille's old notebook. And across from them, dozens of women, many of whom had once been silenced at Grant Industries, now standing in solidarity. She was the one person who never tried to impress me. She didn't care about my title, my money, or my power. She cared about whether I showed up, whether I listened, whether I could admit when I was wrong. And for a long time I didn't. But Camille, she still saw something worth saving. A beat of silence. I didn't just lose my wife. I lost time. I lost moments I can never get back. But in her final months, she gave me one last gift, a chance to try again. With Noah. With all of you. He looked toward his son. I know now that legacy isn't about your name on a building or a Forbes list. It's about who you stand up for when no one's watching. It's about what you leave behind in people, not profits. The crowd was quiet, not from disinterest, but reverence. Later that afternoon, Elias helped Noah hang a wind chime on Camille's favorite bench in the garden. It was simple, silver rods strung from a piece of driftwood they'd found together at the beach, with her initials carved into the side. When the wind passed through, it made a sound like laughter in the trees. "She'd like this," Noah said, stepping back to admire it. "She would," Elias nodded. Noah looked up at him. "Do you think I'm like her?" "In every way that matters," Elias said. "You've got her eyes, her questions, her heart." Noah smiled faintly. "She used to say even broken things can grow if you plant them in the right soil." Elias knelt beside him. "That's exactly what we're doing now." In the weeks that followed, change happened fast. Camille's story had ignited something far beyond one company. State senators called for reviews of workplace discrimination laws. Nonprofits rallied behind whistleblowers. And quietly, Elias returned to the boardroom, not as CEO, but as a consultant working with a new leadership team, led by one of the very women Camille had once mentored. He donated his personal shares to a foundation in Camille's name, the Sea Green Fund, dedicated to advancing STEM education for Black girls and mental health services for single mothers. The first scholarship was awarded to a 7th grader named Jordan, who wanted to build a robot that could plant trees. Noah handed her the certificate himself. One night, Elias sat in Noah's room, watching his son fall asleep beneath glow-in-the-dark stars they had stuck to the ceiling. He reached over and smoothed the boy's curls, then whispered the words Camille used to say at bedtime. "Eyes to the sky, feet on the ground, and your heart wide open." Outside the window, the wind chime sang again. He stood, closing the door quietly behind him, and walked down the hall, past the photos on the wall, past the telescope in the corner, and past the kitchen table still cluttered with Lego pieces and school books. His phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Lena. "NASA's summer mentorships just opened. Noah's name is on the short list." Elias smiled. There were still hard days. Grief didn't vanish, but it softened. It made space. And in that space, a new kind of legacy bloomed, not built on power or apology, but on love, redemption, and the unwavering promise of showing up. If this story touched your heart, help us share it with others. Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of justice, love, and redemption. And tell us, what part hit you the hardest? We read every word. Thank you for being here.